Joining me now to discuss all of this is our panel, Josh Krashar, senior political correspondent at Axios, Symone Sanders-Townsend, host of Symone on MSNBC and former advisor to Vice President Harris, and Rick Tyler, Republican strategist and an MSNBC political analyst. Let's start off by talking about this enthusiasm gap, which, according to our latest poll, has just narrowed considerably. Let's put the numbers up. I mean, it's within the margin of error, 68% to 66%. Josh, when you look at these numbers, what do you think is driving this? Is it purely Dobbs and Roe v. Wade being overturned, or what do you make of those numbers?
Abortion is the dominant issue. It's given Democrats, who are the party in power, usually doesn't get as excited for the first midterm election for their party. But clearly the Dobbs decision had a galvanizing effect. I also don't underestimate the impact of the Trump, the search, the fact that Trump is now the center of attention. We know in 2018, the last midterm election, when Trump is the center of attention, Democrats show up and are more engaged to go to the polls. So, look, I think the Democratic base is turning out. I still think the NBC poll showed swing voters still not sold on the Democratic Party, but it gets them one step closer to preventing the types of losses we were talking about a couple months ago.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, what does it actually look like, Symone, in these races? We saw it in Kansas, and you and I have talked about this before. You saw that enthusiasm to get out and to vote for that Kansas ballot initiative. I mean, that was a single issue that they were going out to vote for. It gets a lot more complicated when you're talking about a candidate who may have various different positions depending on what issue you're talking about. So how do you expect to see it play out in some of these races?
Look, I think the enthusiasm numbers are good. It means that Democratic voters are dialed in. It does not mean that Democratic voters are going to come out and vote. It means that they are susceptible to your message to come out and vote, and so you still have to turn them out. This is a turnout election. I do believe that abortion, obviously, motivating factor. I think guns. Folks are going back to school all over the country this month, and parents are concerned. And we talk about Florida. In Florida specifically, Ron DeSantis, he endorsed 30 different local school board candidates. Okay, so schools are on the ballot this election cycle. I think it is going to be incumbent upon Democrats to continue to hone their message about what they have done, what that really means for people in places like what are the new energy numbers in this bill, Inflation Reduction Act law? What does that mean for Wisconsin? What do the prescription drugs provisions mean in Arizona? What can Mark Kelly say to Arizonans? And that is going to be the difference here.
Rick, what's the message for Republicans? Mark Molinaro, for example, trying to keep the focus on the economy, on inflation. Is that the right call? I mean, Josh brings up the point that you have the Mar-a-Lago search sort of looming large over all of this.
New York 19 is emblematic of the entire race, which is why everybody's paying attention to it, because the number one concern that Democrats have is actually abortion is second, so it is a motivating factor, but number one is democracy. And what the Republicans have done is they've turned a classic Biden down in the polls, inflation is high, lots of challenges. Democrats typically don't turn out in off-year elections as much as Republicans do. They had all that in their sails. And what they've done is they have nominated Trump candidates. And so this is turning into, instead of what the Republicans wanted, which is a referendum against Biden and his administration and his performance, although he's been fairly successful lately, it is now going to be a referendum on Trump. That is a remarkable turn of events. Considered, my hats off to the Democrats who maneuvered the Republicans from back to blue to defund the Gestapo. I mean, this is a remarkable, they're just giving up the crime issue entirely.
And, you raise that point, and it's notable because you do have Republicans who had kind of left Trump, and now the Mar-a-Lago search, it seems to be galvanizing Republicans around Trump in this moment. And I wonder if that's making the Republican Party jittery, establishment Republicans.
Well, it should make them jittery because not only is Trump seeing record fundraising, they're seeing people supporting him. There's a whole number of reasons for that, but 57% still want these investigations to go on. But I think the Republican establishment, of course, does not want Trump to be the center of attention in this election. They want Biden to be the center of attention because his numbers are still in the 40s. And if Trump becomes the center of attention, And if he announces, God forbid, for the Republicans this fall, every Republican trying to win a race will be asked every morning by every reporter in the country, what do you think about the nonsensical thing that Donald Trump said this morning?
But he doesn't even need to run because his candidates are on the ballot. And you're reminded of Trump every day you hear a Blake Masters or a Dr. Oz or a Herschel Walker talk. And that is the big problem. The NBC poll has Biden's job approval at 42%. The Republicans have a 2-point advantage on the generic ballot. Right track, wrong track, really. Kristen, you said how bad it is for the party in power. It's the candidates. It's these MAGA candidates that are really jeopardizing Republican prospects.
And Rick, you brought up something interesting, which is that President Biden now believes he's had some legislative wins. He wants to go out. He wants to talk about them. Chuck was talking to Representative Andy Barr yesterday and pressed him, what are your policy proposals to deal with inflation? And he didn't really have a specific answer. He kind of continued along that track of countering President Biden. Do you think that's smart politics, or should Republicans get an answer to that question?
Well, the last time Republicans tried to put up policy alternatives in Rick Scott's proposal, it caused them some political problems.
Biden seized on it. He made it one of his core arguments.
Absolutely. I think, though, when you're talking about the dominant issue in the campaign, rising cost of prices, goods, the economy, it would help for someone like Andy Barr or anyone in the Republican rank and file to have an answer on what you would do differently, what the Republican alternative would be.
Yeah. Symone, the Democrats, again, they do have some things to tout, and we are going to see that from President Biden once he's off of his vacation. And yet you have inflation, which continues to be high, continues to be intractable. If you look at the polling, the economy is still one of the big issue for voters.
The economy is absolutely the big issue. I would argue, frankly, that abortion is an economic issue. The ability of women to make decisions about their lives, work, community, family, directly tied to their pockets. I think that Democrats should go out there and make the point that not only is this what the bill is going to do for you, but Republicans want to talk about inflation. Every single one of them in the United States Congress voted against the Inflation Reduction Act. We don't know why. Maybe someone should ask them. I do think that, look, you live by the gas prices, you die by the gas prices, right? It's kind of like living by the stock market. Gas prices are going down. There is a concern that gas prices could go back up. And so I think that the White House is right to continue to tout the good things that are happening, what they have done to get these numbers down. But caution, 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 caution. Things could go up.
Rick, do you think that Republicans should start getting an answer to that question, what they get specific about what their policy proposals would be? Or is it enough to just say, look, this is happening on Biden's
part
watch?
of what the Democrats have an advantage because their answer is always a big government solution, and then, of course, that's easy to report on. It's not easy to report on free market solutions because they don't involve government, right? So there is an advantage there. Look, from a purely political perspective, the Inflation Reduction Act, which I think is a misnomer because it does nothing, in my opinion, to reduce inflation, it doesn't matter. The Democrats like it. They think it is going to reduce inflation. It was a big boost for them, and the Republicans don't. Again, they didn't have an answer for it. There is no one on my side who knows how to, that I know of, who knows how to defend free market economics in the way Milton Friedman could.
Were you all surprised to see that concerns about the democracy has now moved to the top issue in our polling? Do you think that helps Democrats? What do you make of that?
I think it helps Democrats, but I also think, I know it's the way that the question was asked, and so I think we'll have to see how this tracks between now and November if democracy still stays the number one concern. But also I think it speaks to the fact that the January 6 hearings could have been impactful. This was during the same time that the search on Mar-a-Lago happened. People are like, what is happening? Meanwhile, you got election deniers running, and you're hearing about it. I don't know what this means specifically for this November. Again, folks are going out and they're not voting on ballot initiatives. They're voting on particular people, particular candidates. And unless people do their research, maybe they don't know that, Tudor Dixon isn't on the up and up in Michigan.
All right. Well, a lot to chew on. Thank you so much for getting us started on a very busy Monday. Really appreciate it, Symone, Rick, and Josh. Great conversation.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.